Sports Intel with Ryan Walsh is brought to you by Mary Freebed, Collectible Insurance Services, West Michigan Eye Care Associates, Eric Hall Aesthetic and General Dentistry, Calder Financial Group, Rydan Investments, and Encore Business Group. Sports Intel with Ryan Walsh airs live Monday nights 7 to 9 Eastern on Jethro.fm.
Happy Memorial Day here. We want to thank everybody for their service, past and present here. We have a serviceman in the studio here. Rex is sitting behind me, backing me up. I feel very comfortable. He's backing me up. I know nobody's going to attack me from the back because I got Rex behind me here. Rex is behind me and not at his normal position because we got Joey Williamson in studio. What's up, Joey? How's it going? Good. He's going to be jumping in on different things here, and we're going to get him involved in some future interviews, and he's going to be part of the 8:30 segment for us here. Mom's in the studio, and Big G's giving me the thumbs up here. He's having his inaugural holiday edition of Sports Intel. What's up, Big G?
What's going on?
How's it going?
Good. Happy to be here.
Hey, so we normally get obsessed with the thing of the day here. So since you guys are here, I'm going to kind of revisit the thing of the day. It's Memorial Day, so it's already its own thing. But it's also National Blueberry Cheesecake Day. That's very specific. But we asked some of the guests a couple weeks ago because it was National Cake Day. So I want to expand that back to today and ask what your favorite cake is, Big G.
Well, looking at me, I haven't missed too many meals, nor have I missed too many cakes.
No judgments here. This is a judgment-free zone.
I'm a big chocolate cake guy.
That's a solid one.
Yep.
That's solid. What about you, Joey?
Gotta go with the same thing.
Chocolate?
Love chocolate.
That's a solid one. We already said Mom's last time when we did cake. I picked pound cake for her. That's pretty good. We also had somebody select cheesecake, which is good. So we'll get Rex's at the end. I don't think we actually got Rex's, so we're gonna get Rex's at the end here. But I don't want to wait too much longer. We got our first guest on the line. This is gonna be fun here. So as everybody knows, Mary Freebed's our title sponsor, and we like to focus on adaptive sports, people that overcome physical issues and have great sports careers and things. And so we have Ginessa Aguirre from the Mary Freebed Junior Pacers. They just won the national championship, and she was the MVP. And so we got her for the show, and we welcome her to the show. Welcome to the show, Ginessa.
Hi, thank you.
You're welcome. I'm happy to have you here. Congratulations on the championship and the MVP. You have to be still riding high from all of that, the big weeks leading up to the tournament and the big tournament here.
Yes, I am.
Good. Well, so I wanted to talk to you about your involvement in Mary Freebed and adaptive sports. And so we'll talk more about the tournament, but I wanted to know how you first got involved in adaptive sports and with Mary Freebed.
Yeah, so I was injured when I was about 3 years old, so we always tried looking for adaptive sports for me to play, and that's when my mom came across wheelchair basketball. So I started playing when I was around 7 years old, and I'm currently 17, so I've been playing for about 10 years now.
So you got an early start on it then, if you've been playing for 10 years.
Yes, I did.
Well, that's good. So did you try out other sports in the meantime? Did you try any others out before you settled on basketball?
Yeah, I tried softball, soccer, and I tried out tennis, which I actually really liked. But when I tried out basketball, I knew that was the sport that I wanted to play.
Okay, so you liked tennis. So why did you then decide to try something else? Presumably you tried basketball after tennis. So why did you decide, well, this maybe wasn't the perfect one for me? Why did you try basketball after that?
Well, I wanted a more fast-paced and competitive game, and I'm a very social person. And in basketball, you have to be social. You have to communicate with others. And, yeah, it's just a very fast-paced and competitive game. So, yeah, that's why I chose basketball. Tennis was fun, but it just I didn't find the high that I actually wanted playing tennis.
Well, I have to imagine the team aspect plays a part in that, because we talked to some adaptive sports athletes from the hand cycling, And one of them, I asked him, he was a basketball player, and then after he got injured for his adaptive sport, he turned to hand cycling instead of basketball. And I asked him why he did that. He said he wanted to play an individual sport, but I can see being like you and wanting the team aspect, because that's so important, especially with an adaptive sport, having other people to pick you up, literally and hypothetically. And because I've seen that, and we'll talk a little bit about the sport as a whole. I've seen you guys play. I've been down to Mary Free Bed and seen the wheelchair basketball. It's great stuff. I encourage everybody to go check it out. But it has to be fun to have the team aspect, because when you're playing tennis or some of the other sports, you're out there by yourself. It's not as fun. You can't celebrate with a team.
Yeah. And like, I've always had that like leadership role. And when I joined basketball, like, that's when I started using it most. I love guiding my teammates. So yeah.
Well, I bet. Yeah. So, yeah, obviously you were the team leader, getting MVP and everything. So talk a little bit about that. Talk about how you keep your teammates motivated and that leadership aspect in the adaptive sports here.
So basketball is it's a contact game, but it's also a lot of, it's a mental game. So we have to have that positive attitude. We can't get in our heads, get ourselves down. So, that happens to people. And we had a couple rough tournaments. But, we have to bring up everybody's moods. We got to keep them positive. Just because we may not be winning doesn't mean that we can't win in the future. So I hyped up my other teammates, like, come on, guys, we got this. We know this is going to be a tough game, but we know we can do this. And, well, we did. We made it all the way to nationals, and we won. So, yeah, talking to my teammates is one of my favorite things. I love encouraging others, and they encourage me, too, as long as our coaches and stuff. So, yeah.
Well, yeah, and you guys you may have had a couple rough tournaments, but you got playing right at the right time. So clearly that motivation and the stick-to-itiveness helped you guys, because that's a key to a lot of sports, no matter what the sport is, playing the best at the right time. So you guys were just working your way into the season and finding that team chemistry, and then you guys prevailed. So that's great. I want you to talk a little bit about your coach, because you mentioned your coaches. Coach Montgomery's very experienced in this, and so I want to talk a little bit about him and his experience, because he's been doing this a long time.
Yes, so Coach Lee, he's so determined. He is the most determined person that I have ever met. He cares about his teammates, or the kids like their family, and he's very good at training people, to be great players, but he's also great at teaching people how to be great on and off the court. He always has such a positive attitude, and he always believes in his players. Sometimes we get into our heads and we're like, I don't got this. This is too hard for us. But he believes in all of us, and he pushes us. Oh, he does push us. He pushes us to do our best, and I'm just very grateful to have him as a coach. He's just a great person overall, and a great mentor as well.
Well, yeah, he obviously pushes you guys because he knows you have potential to go further and do better, what you guys did do throughout the season. So that's great. When did you first come into contact with him? Did you have other coaches before that? Like when you first started, did you have coaches and trainers, and then did those change over the years, or have you had some consistency in the coaches that you've had?
So starting basketball, starting at 7 years old, I was on a prep team, so I did have a different coach. I knew of Coach Lee, but he wasn't my coach yet. That's when I moved up to varsity when I was about 12 or 13 years old. That's when he became my coach. And, yeah, I knew of him the whole time I had been playing, but he wasn't my coach until I joined the varsity team. Oh,
interesting. Okay. So, obviously, you were the MVP. Congratulations on that. I want to talk a little bit about your playing style, because the game is so interesting to me. I'm a big basketball fan. It's my favorite sport. And the adaptive nature of it, and adapting to being in the chairs and and having that element of it is another degree of difficulty that you guys have to deal with. But it's nice, beautiful basketball that you guys play. But you mentioned something in there that I wanted to talk to you about, because you talked about having contact with the other folks, that it's a contact sport. There's a lot of contact between those chairs. I've watched a decent amount of the games, and that's the first thing that stuck out to me. I can't believe you guys and the chairs hold up so well, because you're not afraid to run into each other.
Oh yeah, I personally am not afraid. I'm always up for a good fight. But yeah, there's a lot of contact. There's a lot of crashing and falling. Personally, I have never fallen, which I'm grateful for, because you can get some injuries like that. But we're trained very well to where we can kind of prevent those like major injuries. Like, we know how to fall the correct way, and we know how to pick ourselves up. Like I said, I don't fall like as much as my other teammates, but I'm always there to help them back up, which is great. To always have a great relationship with your teammates, because they're always there to lean on, like physically and figuratively. But yeah, there's a lot of contact. We have to train, we have to work out a lot, so we're able to pick ourselves up and to control our chairs, which it may look easy out on the court, but it takes a lot of work to get that chair going.
I don't know who it looks easy to. Definitely not me. I have a lot of respect for what you guys do, and because you talk about the falling, that was interesting to me in watching the Olympics. I watched a lot of the Olympics this year, the Paralympics, and the different types of falls, and then the different ways to get up. Those were all fairly interesting, because it takes a lot of strength. But I wanted to ask you about that. You were talking about the falling and being taught how to fall. That's kind of like a martial arts thing. When you take martial arts, part of competing in martial arts is learning how to fall. So is that was part of some of the early practices and training, that you kind of learn how to absorb the contact a little bit and brace yourself in some ways?
Yeah, it's sort of a watch and learn kind of thing. You observe others, how they pick themselves up. There's no certain or specific way to pick yourself up. It kind of depends on who the player is, because everyone has different mobility. We don't really go over it during practices, but our coach is like, hey, if you fall, don't try and catch yourself with your wrists, because you're those are what you use to push and to shoot the ball, so maybe fall on your side. But there's a lot of wheelchair basketball sports camps, which going to those, they really show you a lot of different skills and stuff. And at those camps, they do show you how to fall correctly, and how to catch yourself, how to pick yourself up. But yeah, at practices, we don't really get taught that. We kind of just have to watch and learn and observe the other players. Gotcha.
That makes sense. And so now, I read in the article that Thomas Cook did for Fox that are you going to try to play in college now too?
Yes, I'm trying my hardest to play into college. I'm still trying to make a decision, but there's a lot of great teams out there. But academics come first. Basketball is just a little add-on. But yeah, I would really love to get involved in wheelchair basketball in college. It's much more competitive than just your regular, teams. They practice every day, so they're definitely getting their workout in. Yeah.
Well, that's great. Well, yeah, that's smart, because it's great that you can play the sport, but the academics will be what you kind of lean on in the future. So that's great. I want you to talk a little bit about Mary Freebed's impact on your career and your ability to get into adaptive sports.
Yeah, Mary Freebed is such an inclusive and welcoming community and organization. After I got injured, I was admitted to Mary Freebed. So, I've known them practically my whole life, and they've never failed me. They've never let me down. And when we heard that they had adaptive sports, that just made me love them even more and appreciate how much work they've put in. They take care of their patients and their players so well. And, they don't just have basketball. They have all types of different sports and clinics for other people to try out. And yeah.
Well, that's great. Yeah, definitely something to check out. And if you haven't seen these folks play, go down to the Mary Free Bed Y. There's a lot of different events and stuff. But we appreciate you joining the show, Ginessa, and good luck on your future and the rest of your career here.
All right. Thank you.
All right, take care.
Have a good day.
You too. All right, thanks to Ginessa Aguirre. We're going to move to one of our teammates next, Schuyler Whitney. She was all-tournament team in that same tournament, and we'll talk a little bit more adaptive sports with her. So stick with us. You're listening to Sports Intel on Jethro FM. We're happy to bring on another member of the Mary Free Bed Pacers. We're talking some adaptive sports here in this few-week span here with our title sponsor, Mary Free Bed, and want to talk to Schuyler Whitney, also a member of the Mary Free Bed Pacers, Junior Pacers, tournament champions here. So welcome to the show, Schuyler.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Definitely. Yeah, we're happy to have you. We're proud of your accomplishments here in the tournament. That was great stuff. You guys have to be pleased that you came out with the win here. I know you had some troubles earlier in the season, but you put it together at the right time and took the title here.
Yeah, definitely. It seemed slow at first, but yeah, we got it all together in the end, and yeah, got that title.
Yeah, that's great. So, and you were all tournament team. Congrats on that. It has to be very enriching to have that accomplishment and the team accomplishment. Tell us a little bit about how you got into adaptive sports initially here.
Well, I actually started at Mary Free Bed's camp that they hold every summer. So I was about 8 years old, and I just kind of joined in on that one day, and I fell in love with basketball and continued that to this day. So that's kind of how I got started.
Nice. So did you try any other sports, or was it just basketball?
I tried other sports because essentially what that camp is, it's just kind of a conglomeration of all type of adaptive sports. And I ended up getting a camper of the year. So I got a free wheelchair, and so I had to pick a sport. At the time, me and my brother were watching the NBA, and I was like, oh, cool, I'll try wheelchair basketball. And so I did, and now it's just mostly history.
That's interesting. So they have a promotion where the camper of the year is actually gifted a free wheelchair to kind of get them started?
Yeah. There's a couple of them that go through different companies, essentially like Performax and a couple other ones as well.
Oh, interesting. Okay. Well, who are some of the people in the NBA? You said you watch a lot of NBA. Are there certain people that you like to watch, or who are some of your favorite NBA folks right now?
Right now, I'm really interested in Anthony Edwards and how he plays. How he's more of a versatile player and that can do a lot of things. And then kind of backing off of that, kind of Curry. I know they're a lot of popular ones, but they're also really good. So sometimes I aspire to do what they can.
Well, they're popular for a reason. They're both very accomplished players. Which one would you say you try to emulate with your game? Are you more of a kind of distance shooter? I know Anthony Edwards is now a distance shooter. I mean, he took the 3-point championship. I feel like Curry is still more the distance shooter, and Edwards is more aggressive, taking it to the lane and everything. But is there somebody you kind of try to emulate, either shooting from distance or getting other people involved or cutting to the basket, things like that?
I kind of do everything. For me, I prefer to drive to the basket, especially as I have been developing my outside shot more. So I kind of look more towards Anthony Edwards in that way, kind of like how he was last year. He's kind of more of a slasher in a way. So, yeah. Or like how even LeBron was when he was a little younger as well, more driving to the basket, getting those layups and getting in the key.
So you improved your outside shot, and then that way your defender has to come a little further out, and then you have more room to kind of cut to the basket and wreak some havoc in there.
Yeah, and also doing that also gives my teammates also more availability as well, because if I'm drawing people towards me, it drives them away from them, and then I can also pass it around as well.
Yeah, that's perfect. Yeah, you condense the defense and then kick it out to a teammate. That's a good plan. Do you prefer the screening game in wheelchair basketball fascinates me because you guys, I was talking, I had Ginessa on the last segment, and I was talking about this with her. You guys are very aggressive with the screens, and there's a lot of contact with those chairs and stuff. You guys set very good screens. Do you like to have a screen at the top, or just kind of do it on your own?
For me, it really depends on the situation. If it's where the defense is really locked down in the middle, I take that screen. If it's in a situation where I think I can cut to the middle, or they keep on leaving it open, and I know I can kind of work my way in there, I prefer to do that. So it's kind of more of a situational thing.
Gotcha. Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, that part of the game fascinates me because there's a lot of getting to a spot and then trying to restrict players from another spot, which is obviously the point of a screen. But even in the open floor, there's a lot of that where there's clearly some scouting involved, where somebody likes to get to a certain spot and then you kind of beat them to that spot, and that seems to be how a lot of the defense is based, which is fascinating to me because that creates an opportunity to kind of beat them to the spot and then occupy that and then force them further out of their comfort zone.
Yeah. That's perfectly explained it.
Well, that's interesting to me. I'd like to talk a little bit about the defense aspect because it has to be tough. You're trying to make your way as there's other chairs there. There's other people. You don't necessarily know what direction they're going to go. So it's often seems to be a focus on keeping the players lateral to perpendicular to the basket so that you kind of restrict that driving lane.
Yeah, so defense it's key. I mean, it's key even in the NBA, but I feel like in wheelchair basketball, it's especially more. We always say is that you want to keep them away from the basket, obviously, but there are times that you also don't want them facing the basket at all. So trying to turn them away from that as well, or forcing them to turn away. It's just like some of those little smaller things as well. And then also trying to get a pass or a not so good shot off as well, or forcing them to take a wrong turn or shot.
Well, yeah, I imagine forcing them away from the basket, especially in wheelchair basketball, that's a little different element because then you're basically cutting off half the floor because you're facing them to one side and then they only have access to the players on that side for the passing lane there. So that seems to be part of the strategy. And then you've got to reverse the ball and you've got them kind of cornered there. So that's interesting. So what's next for you? Do you have more years with the Pacers here? What's next for you?
Yeah, I have. Well, I'm going to be a senior next year, so I have one more year with the Pacers, and then eventually I hope to go off to college. I don't know exactly what college yet, but that is definitely a plan. And then ultimately one day I want to head off to the Paralympics and get a gold medal.
Amazing. Well, that's a great goal. Yeah, we had John Boy on the show actually a few months ago, so we talked to him about his journey. Have you had a chance to meet him? I know he's associated with Mary Free Bet as well.
Yeah, I have. I mean, he plays for our D1 team, if I remember correctly, and so yeah, I've seen him around, and he knows me, and I know him.
Well, it has to be nice to have people like that and show, hey, this is possible. You can get there. He did it. And you've got the platform with Mary Free Bet, so that has to be nice to have Mary Free Bet here to support you, have the coaching system, have the infrastructure here to support your quest there.
Yeah, it most definitely helps. I mean, sometimes I wonder, like just how lucky I am to have those certain outlets I can go to.
Well, it's such a key thing when you do. I mean, sports are key for development for anybody, but yeah, to have that team aspect and that group aspect, that's the main thing. We've interviewed several adaptive sports athletes on the show, and that seems to be one of the commonalities because that community is so important. Having people that can relate to what you're going through, help lift you up, help guide you, and so that's great that we do have that here locally. It's very inspiring.
Yeah, and I mean, I never thought I'd be in a position like I am today, winning a championship and being around those that also understand some of those struggles and differences that we all kind of share. I mean, it's very helpful as well, and to knowing that.
Well, and win the championship you guys did, and now you got another year, so hopefully you can go back to back here.
Yeah, that is most definitely the plan. I mean, that'd be great, and yeah, that's what we're working towards.
Awesome. Well, thanks for joining the show, Schuyler. We appreciate you coming on and sharing your journey, and we wish you the best of luck for the rest of your journey. It looks like the future's bright for you here.
Yeah, thank you, and once again, thank you for having me as well.
No problem. Take care.
You too.
All right, thanks to Schuyler Whitney. Good stuff from him and Ginessa here. We're going to turn our attention to football. We're going to have Mike Payton of A to Z Sports on and talk a little Lions. So stick with us. You're listening to Sports Intel on Jethro FM. We're happy to bring on Mike Payton here. I've been wanting to get him for a while. We had to go a circuitous route to get him. We had to go through Ryan Roberts to get him because we found him first and then had to get more local. So I'm glad we could track you down here, Mike.
Absolutely, Ryan. Thanks. I'm sorry I missed your previous message to me.
I don't blame you for not responding, but I'm glad Ryan could put a word in for us. We talked with him about subs, if I remember correctly. He likes a chicken cutlet sub, so that's probably what won him over because we were getting distracted by we always like the thing of the day here on the show, and so the thing of that day was what your favorite hoagie was. So it's cake day today. It's National Blueberry Cheesecake Day. Do you have a favorite cake?
I'm living out here in Detroit. This place, Kitty's Cheesecake, makes an unbelievable Superman cheesecake. It's so good.
What is a Superman cheesecake?
So it's like the
ice
Superman
cream?
ice cream.
Okay.
Yeah, but it's a cheesecake. It tastes just like it, but it also gives you that that smooth cheesecake texture. It's so good. Kitty's Cheesecake. I can't. It's like I work for them or something. I can't sell their product enough.
Well, they've got to sponsor A to Z Sports or something.
Yeah, sounds like it.
Well, I have to try that one. That's a good pick. See, that's why I like asking this question. That was an off the board pick, just like Ryan Roberts. So A to Z Sports has some good picks with the food here. But we got to talk a little football. You have great football coverage. I enjoy following your coverage on A to Z Sports. And so I wanted to talk through the Lions offseason here with you and get some of your thoughts. We had the draft. You made news during the draft, and so I'm just going to get this out of the way because you made news for, in my opinion, on the most reasonable possible thing that you could have said. That was a very reasonable take, I thought, on the whole Jameson Williams thing, because I don't think people understand that there's going to be an odd man out in some of these re-signings, and it's very likely that Jameson could be one of those odd men out. But I'm not a fan of the vitriol that you received, so I want to kind of speak out against that because I don't like the responses of the fans to just what you were responding as kind of an opinion piece.
Yeah. I mean, it's. I appreciate you doing that. It's kind of comes with the territory in today's media world. I don't want to accuse everybody of having media literacy, but I think there's, it is something that exists. I think people read that as me saying I have some sort of inside information, which I didn't. I was simply making an opinion based off of what I saw. Matthew Golden, very similar player. They did bring him in. That happened. They clearly were looking for something. They didn't sign him to this big extension that everybody thought he would get this offseason because I just don't feel like, well, I love Jameson Williamson. He's such a great player, and I have such high hopes for his future, and I think he's going to be just amazing for this Lions team. It's great that they didn't move him. I do think that they have concerns about, tendering such a large contract to somebody who's been suspended multiple times and has some injury history and just little things like that. And like you said, there has to be an odd man out at some point. I don't know who that's going to be, but it makes sense that it would be Jameson Williams, considering that he's probably going to get somewhere close to $30 million a year. So we'll see where that goes. But that was the thought.
Well, yeah, and I might end up making myself a bit of a meat shield for you here by the end of the interview because I really saw the line of thinking with it, because all those things that you just mentioned and the fact that like we said, there's got to be a bit of an odd man out here. We talk about this a lot on the show, how this is one of the perils of being a good team. We're used to the Lions being a not so good team. And during that era, there were a lot of things that were different. We were waiting for different things, where we were waiting for cut down day so that other players could be acquired from other teams. Now with this era of the Lions is a little different. People are taking the coaches and they want our coaching staff and the culture and some of the players, and they see opportunities elsewhere. So I think with a guy like J-Mo, another team could see the opportunity and want to offer him more, and knowing that he could get potentially more on the open market than he could with the Lions, because I think the Lions are seeing this like I am, which is where, as far as positional value, I think wide receiver is a little overvalued right now compared to the talent that's coming in. You talked about some of the different talent in folks in the draft, and I'm not undercutting J-Mo at all. He's a very talented player, but like you said, he does have some concerns. He's had some injury issues. He's had some off the field issues. And so you combine that with the fact that he's going to be wanting a pretty high end contract. And if that contract, because of the leveling up of the money, ends up being, say, he expects higher than what Amon-Ra St. Brown made in his contract, I think that's a hard contract to justify.
Yeah, I mean, and you said it. I mean, and you're also working on such a shorter timeline than what you saw with St. Brown. We saw years and years of him just being a good player, so it made sense to make that big deal. And I think, like I said, I think Jameson's a great player. I think he changes the offense, and I don't want him to go anywhere. I don't think, just like every Lions fan, I don't think that him being traded would have been a good idea in terms of the offense of it all. But in terms of trying to make sure that you're getting Bryant Branch signed to what's going to be a market-leading deal, he's probably going to top Kirby Joseph. You're trying to get Aiden Hutchinson to be the highest paid edge rusher in the league. You're going to have probably the highest paid tight end in the league in Sam Laporta. Jack Campbell's going to get a decent deal. Guys like Alex Anzalone got to be extended as well. So there's going to be all these huge deals, and a lot of them are going to be top of the market deals. And like I said, the cheapest one, the most expensive one is Jameson Williams, and that's where you got to look. It's like, hey, we're talking about 1 year. If he can come out and be just unbelievable in 2025, well, then you have until 2026, and then, maybe you can find the money to do it. But the more reasonable thing, the more expected thing is probably that they're going to be looking to trade him at some point to get assets back and grab another receiver.
Yeah, because there is a lot of talent coming through in these drafts. That's the other element of this. It seems like the position, along with maybe running back to a degree, that seems to replenish itself a lot. I mean, we saw that with the Packers this year. I feel like their strategy was just to get as many receivers as possible. Their receiver room is going to be packed here.
Yeah, I think they're trying to do things the same way the Lions were doing. Like, they're trying to get multiple guys, and that's where the running back position is too. Everybody wants to be like the Lions. They want to have their 1-2 punch, and you got to have multiple good receivers, just like the Bengals or the Lions or some of these other teams that have a couple good receivers. I think everybody's trying to mimic that success. So, yeah, I think that's what the Packers were thinking. I think they got a good receiver in Matthew Golden, so that should make things a little interesting there.
Yeah, they went with a different strategy than the other teams in the division, because I feel like when kind of breaking down the roster moves, obviously Johnson moves to the Bears, and so he's going to presumably build it a little similar to how the Lions were built, and it seemed like the Vikings were kind of doing the same thing. It seemed like three of the teams kind of built through the trenches. The Lions were already built that way. The Bears added a ton in the offensive and defensive line, and the Vikings did reinforce both lines as well. It seemed like the Packers went a little different direction there. I could have seen them trying to do the same thing, adding some guys to the trenches, especially the offensive line, to help keep Love upright and keep him healthier, because obviously that affected him a little bit last year. But they're going the other direction and trying to give him some more targets downfield here.
Yeah. I mean, and he's needed it because Dontavian Wick and Christian Watson, and those guys have been okay, but I think they needed somebody who could just be that guy, and they just have not had that. And then defensively, I think they just wanted to get smaller on the defensive line so they can be more athletic. And we'll see how that goes with the pass rush, but in terms of stopping the run, that's kind of where the Lions are going to be able to butter their bread on the Packers.
Oh yeah, it's going to be interesting, this division this year. I was on a different podcast last week, and we were talking about this because I feel like the division as a whole was pretty good last year. The Bears obviously had their issues. A lot of that was internal and coaching related. They've reinforced that with poaching some of the coaches from the Lions and added a lot of talent. This division arguably got stronger in the offseason. They all get stronger, and then you kind of figure it out during the year, but because everybody wins the offseason. But it really seems like this is going to be a tougher division this year with a very tough collective schedule as well.
Yeah, I think it's going to be the hardest division of football, just like it was last year. But I don't see anybody winning 15 games or 14 games this year. It's going to be with all the road schedules that everybody has to face, with going on the road to face Philadelphia and Kansas City and all this. It's going to be harder for every team this year.
Oh yeah, because I looked at the Lions' schedule. Obviously, they slotted in as the one, so they're facing the ones from the other divisions that they're facing. But man, those other schedules didn't look that much easier to me in the North, because they all obviously have to play the North twice, but then playing all those other folks, it's going to be a tough one. But I want to get your take on the draft as a whole here. We'll probably spend most of the rest of the interview on it, but you had an interesting article talking with one of your colleagues at A to Z Sports about Isaac Tesla. He seems to be the guy that everybody's talking about, which is interesting to me. We interviewed him here on this radio station a few weeks ago, and I actually told him when he was talking to me, like, you realize your profile as a Lions receiver, right? And I don't think he wanted to get his hopes up because he's obviously a big Lions fan, but it's interesting how much of a lightning rod he's been since. So I found that article interesting where you guys both took a position and then tried to factually discuss it.
Yeah, it's a really interesting thing, the Isaac Tesla rise, because I remember, I'm at the combine in February, and I'm standing next to the big giant podium, and he's kind of at this little table next to it, and I'm looking at him. I'm like, wow, I didn't even know he was here. And now it's you go back and you look at everything that happened. Basically, he shows up to the Hula Bowl, doesn't get invited to anything else, and just wows everybody. And then suddenly he's at the Senior Bowl, and then he's wowing people some more, and then he's having a solid pro day, good top 30 visits. He just keeps rising and rising up the board. It just became kind of evident over time that, like, this guy is suddenly really popular among NFL teams, and the Lions, were the team that felt they needed to have him the most, and they gave up quite a bit to do it. 2 third-rounders and a next year's third-rounder. So that's something that they clearly wanted to get out of him, because he has ability, really good blocking ability, solid high point catch ability, is fast for his size. He can run a 4.3. That's see a whole lot of 6'4" guys doing that. I think there's a lot of possibility there, and I think he's just really in a bad position at Arkansas in terms of what their offense was and who was running it and the kind of the personnel that they had. I think that this might be a steal.
I agree with you. That's why I wanted to bring it up, because you hit on a bunch of interesting points there. One is it's interesting to me that we can have a story like this in the modern day, kind of hyper over aware of everything in the NFL. You got the combine, everything. You've got like you said, the Hula Bowl, you got the Senior Bowl. You've got all of these different entities that are meant to drum up. We have more information on these players than we ever have. And he still had to kind of bootstrap his own marketing campaign, for lack of a better term. He had to kind of cape up for himself and say, "Hey guys, I'm here. Can I get an invite to the show?" And he made the best of it here.
Yeah, it's interesting because the Lions did something like this with Giovanni Manu last year. They teams were just going to British Columbia to look at Theo Benedette, who was the left tackle to Manu's right, and they just kind of noticed this guy. They're like, wow, look at the size of this guy. Look at his athleticism. And then the next thing you know, half the team has him in for a top 30, and he goes in the fourth round. It's the Lions are that team that seem to be finding, I guess you can call them diamonds in the rough, but they're finding players through interesting methods, and some of these guys that are rising and maybe don't get that big name value or that big exposure like a lot of other players do. And there's a lot of value in guys like that. And Amon-Ra St. Brown was kind of a guy like that. He was, a player that he was the 17th receiver taken in that draft. You just got to know when to pick the right guy.
Oh yeah. Well, and obviously Holmes and his regime have been very good at that. So you have to trust them, but that there's kind of a duality to that trust. So I want to talk about that when we pick up after the break here. But great stuff so far from Mike Payton. Stick with us. You're listening to Sports Intel on Jethro FM. Coming back here with Mike Payton, talking some good stuff about the draft and kind of identifying talent. Yeah, Mike, that's the interesting thing to me about analyzing Brad Holmes, because you'd have to be a fool to not be happy with the output that he's had and the selections that he's had. But in some ways, he's his own worst enemy in that he does kind of get himself into a situation where he leaves these big gaps on the draft board and then kind of panics a little bit and wants to make sure to jump ahead of people. That was the thing with Tesla and what ended up happening. But I thought you guys brought up some good points in that article that you had on A to Z Sports, debating back and forth about that pick, because another guy that I think is important to name in this discussion, and you guys named him in the article, is Pat Bryant out of Illinois. I thought he was kind of slotted similar to Tesla, and he ended up going right at the same spot to one of the teams that Tesla could have potentially been connected to. So it may not, it's one of those things that it's easy to say, oh, he wouldn't have gone for another round, but I don't think it's that clear here.
Well, yeah, the Broncos, who picked at 74, had him in for a top 30, and I think the Bills and the Saints, who were right in that area as well, also had him in. And the interesting thing with Pat Bryant is that was my number one receiver through this whole draft for the Lions, particularly. I really thought that he was going to be perfect for them, but they never really seemed to have much interest in him outside of a formal at the combine. But yeah, they went with Pat Bryant. The Broncos did, and that was like the only receiver that they didn't have a reported visit with. So it was almost like, well, Tesla's gone, let's go with this guy. That's kind of what it felt like.
What do you attribute that to with Bryant? Because I'm with you. I thought the Lions would be high on him. Once you kind of get your mind into Holmes's brain and the archetype that he's looking for, we obviously don't know the character side of things, which factors in with him a lot. But there's a certain archetype that you felt like he was going to look for. That's why I told Isaac in the interview, hey, you've got the physical build, you like to block, you could profile behind Tim Patrick. And I thought Bryant fit that mold fairly well as well. But what do you think they saw, aside from maybe some things in the interviews and stuff we don't have access to?
Well, I thought that he was probably the best blocking receiver in the country last year, and I think a lot of people felt that way. And talking about Pat Bryant right now, and I just thought, I talked to Pat at the combine, and he was all in on the no block, no rock mentality, which is exactly what the Lions love. I felt like he was the perfect fit, but I think they were looking for somebody who was going to be a little bit more athletic, just judging based off of some of the receivers that they talked to. He was more of like a 4-5, 4-6 guy. He's not as fast, but like a Kenny Golladay type, where you're not getting a ton of separation, but you're getting contested catch ability and blocking ability. But with Tesla and some of the other guys, and Golden, some of the other guys that they had in for visits or talked to, you could really see that athleticism. That they're much faster guys, a little bit more separation, but still have that ability to block and contest catches and high point the ball. So at the end of the day, I think they felt better about Tesla than they did about Bryant.
Yeah, it's interesting, but I thought that was a good name to bring up in that article. There was also some later drafted receivers that I thought were interesting there. But I don't want to fall into the same trap that others do, talking about Tesla too much, because they had 2 picks ahead of that, and the Williams pick was very interesting to me because there was a lot of groupthink and a lot of thought out there from a lot of the pundits that they would go edge. But now that I see the Williams pick and the strategy, it seems like it makes sense what they're trying to do, because I feel like people are forgetting on another podcast last week, I was saying, they were asking me who I thought would be kind of the most underrated player or the biggest jump from next year. And I thought it would potentially be Derek Barnes, because I think he's going to factor in as that edge rusher, and a lot of these inside rushers that the heavy edge are going to factor in with getting Williams and reinforcing that middle. Is that what you see? Would you have liked them to go a different direction, or how are you feeling about that first pick?
Yeah, no, I think you're right. Barnes could be kind of that Sam linebacker. That's what he's been doing, since he's been here, been growing to do as much. So at first I didn't like the pick. I thought I was kind of in the same position that most people were. Like, why are you not taking the edge rusher? And it almost felt deliberate at that point. Like, you're fighting the media on it. Brett Holmes is, and fighting the fans on it. Everybody wants this, but I really get the point of where they're going with it. This guy can come in and start in place of Lee McNeil while you're waiting for him to come back, which might not be till November. Then you have somebody who can be your instant replacement for DJ Reader once he's gone. He's in the last year of his deal, and he's obviously getting on the older side of things. So we tend to look at the draft with the Lions being so bad for so long as these are the guys who are going to be your immediate starters. But now they're drafting more towards the future of the Lions. They're drafting for 2025, 2026, 2027. It's for the future. It's not just for right now. It's they're not a player away. They feel like they could probably win it right now, so they're drafting to have sustained success. And I think that's the logic behind picking Williams. And I think that he could be a great space eater that can help in the middle with that pass rush with the guys that they do have. So it's a smart pick.
Yeah, those first 3 picks, it was really after they took the first 2, because once they took Williams and then Rutledge and then even Isaac, it was apparent what they were doing there. It was exactly what you're talking about, Mike, that basically all those positions have a similar outlook for the future, where the incumbent starter is productive but probably isn't going to be on the team beyond next year here. And so that's something where you're going to fill in those gaps, and then also reslot some of that money like we're talking about, because that JMO discussion is poignant, because they're going to have to spend some money here, and they're trying to work some magic with the spending, but they've got a lot of good players, and they have the strategy to pay their players, which is great, but that's only going to take them so far. They're going to have to get young talent to kind of flip the table around a little bit. What'd you think of the day 3 picks? Because one thing that's always interesting to me about the Lions drafts in the Holmes era is it's like if you take one of the day 3 picks and move it up, and then take maybe that middle round leap that he makes, like Manu or Tesla or Vaki, and move him back a little bit, then it all makes sense. Like, oh, this is around where we projected. Frazier was maybe projected a little bit higher, but I feel like they got some good value in day 3.
Yeah, to start with Frazier, I think that was a great pick. I think this is a guy for now who can be sort of that. I don't know if you remember Evan Brown, but a guy who could play center and guard, just a do-all type of guy off the bench. I think he could be that for now. But once, Decker's gone and Ragnow's gone and all these, these older guys are, start moving on, and they need to have the younger guys. I see him as a starting guard at some point. Not sure what side that is or when that'll come, but I do believe that he's going to be great depth off the bench for now, and then a starter later. And then I am maybe uncomfortably high on Ahmed Hassanin. I really think that this guy is going to be the steal of the draft for the Lions this year. I just have such high hopes in him, and I have even before the draft. I just started noticing, like, who's this guy at the combine. Started reading up on him, getting to know him a little bit more, watching tape, and I just see a guy who is so much like Ezekiel Ansah, just untapped potential. It's there. He's just I compared him to Kurt Hennig, Mr. Perfect Kurt Hennig. I don't know if you remember that wrestler or not, but just a guy who could do anything. He's an athlete, just gets it right away. And I think once he continues to grow and learn the game of football more, I just think it's sky's the limit for him.
We have some. Sorry, Mike. We have some wrestling fans in studio, and so Mr. Perfect, you hit that was a perfect comparison. But please continue.
Yeah, great. That's awesome. Dan Jackson, I think could be a great special team safety. I don't know how high his ceiling is after that. And then the Dominic Lovett pick is really the only one I can't figure out, just because I think that they got this guy Jackson Meeks as an undrafted free agent. He seems to be the guy I'm looking at more to make the team than Lovett. I see the gunner ability, but I just for a team that wants their guys to be able to do so many different things, I find it hard for Lovett to get over that just really being able to do one.
Yeah, that's what I had that pick as well, the special teams thing, because they do have a tendency, and that speaks to what we were talking about earlier with some of the receivers. Some of these guys went pretty late, and I think there's going to be some value receivers that went in day 3 and potentially went undrafted. So hopefully the Lions were able to get a couple of those guys. But great stuff, Mike. We appreciate you coming on the show. We're glad that we were able to connect with you here. Hope to connect with you again here closer to the season, but tell everybody where they can follow your great coverage here.
Absolutely, yeah. It's I'm on Twitter at @A_Payton, and you can find me on Blue Sky at the @A_Blue Sky Payton. I'm not sure how to say that whole thing, but if you type my name in, it'll probably come up. And then we're on YouTube at A2ZSports.com/Detroit. We do multiple videos a week, just really quick 5-minute type stuff, and then you can find all my work at A2ZSports.com/Detroit, and we're doing 20-25 articles a week on the Lions. You can get all your news and opinion type stuff there.
Yeah, it's great stuff. Be sure to follow Mike. Also, be nice to him. Let's keep it classy out there. None of this nonsense here. We gotta. He's just trying to write and give his opinions out there. But we appreciate all your coverage here, and we hope to have you back on the show soon.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
All right. Thanks, Mike. Take care. All right, thanks to Mike Payton. Great stuff there. Glad we were able to get him on. We're going to come back after the break and probably do a little Detroit sports roundup, probably some more football, but we're going to get James Gullett on of Michigan Sports Media. And, hey, we had a Mr. Perfect reference, so we might even talk about him after the break, Joey. Yeah, so that's pretty good. We might talk about him after the break. But stick with us. You're listening to Sports Intel on Jethro FM. We're happy to bring on James Gullett here of Michigan Sports Media. They had me on as a guest, so I'm sorry about that, James. But now we're doing a little home and home here, and we just talked with Mike Payton of A to Z Sports, talked some football. So we're planning on talking a little football. We want to talk some baseball because there's a lot of good baseball stuff going on, especially with Skubal. But first, we want to get what your favorite cake is.
Favorite cake?
Yeah. That's the question you thought I was going to ask you, wasn't it?
No, it is not. But I'll probably say any kind of like confetti cake.
Oh, confetti cake. That's a good one. It's so we always go off the National Day. Obviously, it's Memorial Day, but it's also National Blueberry Cheesecake Day. So we figured we'd ask everybody their favorite cake. We've had some good answers so far, but we're keeping it loose here. Happy to get you on. And we've talked to Jay Sweet over there. I like what you guys are doing with Michigan Sports Media. It's kind of an upstart thing that you guys have got going. And then I saw today when I was preparing for the show that you've got kind of an analytics handle that you're introducing on X to follow some of the teams and provide some information there.
Thank you for the shout out on that. I wasn't really expecting it, but yeah, I am huge into statistics and numbers, and I have done for years on Twitter, X, whatever you want to call it nowadays, just blind stats where I like to have like a tournament, and on a side email file, I have like the names for the bracket and all that with statistics. And I like to take the names out of it and just say, who would you rather have on your team, wide receiver A or B? I'll list their receptions, yards, touchdowns, etc., and I'll add a poll question below it so people vote. And then after the votes are calculated, the poll is closed, I will say which one was eliminated by player name, and then the A or B, whoever won, moves on to the next round. So at the end, there is no bias. You can't just pick Calvin Johnson. You can't just pick your team's favorite player. You got to just go via the stats. And I've had some moderate success with that in the past. So I was kind of wanting to bring that more to the national scale and not so much just Detroit, because on my normal X account, I'm still going to be doing the exact same thing I've always done, but I wanted to be able to branch out and explore other fan bases as well, get more people involved.
Well, yeah, I love that concept because I feel like there is a little bit of a bias that comes in knowing somebody's name, and then there's a connotation with that, or you get different media coverage that leads you a certain way. This isn't leading you any way. You're just saying, hey, what would you rather have? Obviously, there are some other skills, like the Lions are a great example. We were just talking about this with Mike Payton, how things like character and blocking and things factor into receivers, where like the receiver that they were drafting this year, I think that's what led to the Tesla pick, because a lot of guys, they say, well, we want a guy that brings in this many catches and has this many yards and this many touchdowns. That's not necessarily what fits in the current Lions offense as it's constructed, because you have a lot of mouths that you have to feed. And so a guy that isn't necessarily going to require the ball as much is actually an advantage, because you can't have somebody coming in and disrupting that room. So that's a factor too. But I like that you kind of take all of that other stuff out of it and say, hey, yeah, pick a profile. And I don't know, you probably can't do that character profile piece, but you go pick a profile. What would you rather have?
Correct. I do stuff like that. And then just yesterday, or it might have been a couple days ago, they all mix together nowadays. I had one where I look up, because I love Pro Football Reference, free shout out for them, and I looked up pass rushers, although the quarterback hits has not been a recorded stat since, or until I should say, 2006, so it is all more recent, since that was not a stat prior to then. But I put out there just like, hey, guess the top 5 Lions in quarterback hits all time, and I had people guessing underneath. And just something to get people entertained and encourage people, a conversation brewing, not just, here's my article, bye.
Oh, yeah. I think the fan engagement piece will be key. I like that part of your guys' operation, that you guys are fans, you guys are starting this, and you're also, becoming pundits and covering it. But there's a lot of room there for fan engagement here, because people like to give their opinions. We don't take call-ins on this show. We've considered it, but we're not quite ready for that whole part here. But yeah, it is nice to have fan engagement and talk with the fans about their opinions. You never know what you're going to get there, but that's interesting stuff. I want to talk a little baseball with you. I know that football is your forte, but we got to talk a little baseball, because Joey and I were talking in the break about Skubal and his masterpiece that he threw. I kind of watched those games out of order. Joey and I are going to talk a little bit about streaming and location of games. We can talk about that too, James, because I'm going to sound very old for a minute. But I can't track down all these games. They're on too many different platforms. I have to pay concurrent services, subscription fees for everything, and I don't know where to find anything. Okay, end of me sounding older for a minute, but it is interesting. I had to find that on Roku and then watch the game today. But man, Skubal, I couldn't believe that game that he had. What'd you think of that game, Joey? That was as complete of a game. I know it was literally a complete game, but it's such a great game there.
I mean, if pretty close to perfect. I mean, what, he gave up 2 hits. Other than those 2 hits,
2 hits.
I felt like a perfect game almost.
It really was.
I mean, it was just lights out.
And those 2 hits were not very. I mean, they were kind of like dink kind of hits. He had one. I think he had one deep hit into that almost got to the track. That didn't end up being a hit. Vierling caught it, but that was like the hardest hit ball that he had. It felt like in that game.
Well, and the fact that he dialed it up on his last pitch.
Oh yeah,
that was nuts.
Yep. Yeah. 103. That reminded me of the end of Major League, where he gets really pumped up, where Charlie Sheen's character gets really pumped up, and then the gun keeps going up. But 103 is insane, and he still tipped that ball too, which is crazy to me. That ball got tipped into the glove.
Yeah.
And so, but what'd you think, Big G? That was quite the game.
Well, that was amazing, and to do it in under 100 pitches, he did it in 94 pitches. Which is called a Maddox. If you complete a game under 100 pitches, it's called a Maddox. And I think more amazing than Skubals, and don't get me wrong, Skubals was amazing. Cater Montero had a Maddox last year. You know, he went complete games in 96, I think, pitches.
Yeah, kind of out of nowhere.
Yeah, out of nowhere. And, you know, pitched well today, but yesterday was... Yeah.
Yeah. What'd you think, James? I know you're a football expert, but I know you cover baseball for the Michigan sports media. That was quite the game. He's a joy to watch here.
Absolutely. You guys took basically the words out of my mouth. The notes I was typing up were mentioning that he had a Maddox, because I think I know maybe 2 people in person that know what a Maddox is. So you took that one out from me. And but then it was close to perfect, and I was listening to your show prior to coming on, and perfect was in my mind for Mr. Perfect reference. So it just kept on rolling. He was on fire. I mean, obviously we know he's good. He's the reigning Cy Young winner and accolades. But 13 strikeouts to 0 walks is what really. I mean, obviously a complete game shutouts. Nothing to scoff at, but the 13 strikeouts to 0 walks is what catches my eye in the box score. That is just such a great command of the strike zone. I mean, his pitch count will also tell you that, of course, but he was borderline. I mean, obviously with only two hits, borderline unhittable, and when he's on top of his game, he's the best in the bigs, in my opinion.
Oh yeah, and he just had ultimate control of not only his. I mean, he basically only used 2 pitches for that game, which is incredible. That's the second Mr. Perfect reference, Joey. You have to be excited. I know you're a Mr. Perfect fan.
Yeah, he's my favorite heel growing up.
Yeah, that's funny. So, are you a wrestling fan too, James?
I was back in the day. I have not kept up with it as I've aged, but I will say, while we're on the Mr. Perfect topic, he is my favorite wrestler of all time. And I do have Mr. Perfect as my gamer tag for Xbox because of that. So
that's pretty good. I just, now that we're talking about him so much, I just imagine that clip of him throwing the football when he was practicing all the things and he was perfect at everything. I now have that running through my head. But we got to take a quick break. We'll come back here with James, and who knows what we'll talk. Maybe we'll talk a little more wrestling. We covered a little baseball, but we got to get some football out of him too. But stick with us. You're listening to Sports Intel on Jethro FM. Coming back here with James Gullett, and then we've got Big G and Joey in studio here. We've been talking a little mishmash of things here, but want to get back to football a little bit, James, because I know that's kind of your specialty. You were talking about the different profiles and analytics you do for football. We talked about an interesting subject on your show that I wanted to bring to this show and maybe get other opinions on, because you guys were asking me who I thought my kind of the under the radar person here for the Lions that is poised for a breakout. And that's a tougher question than it was a couple years ago, because a couple years ago you could have picked a handful, 5-10 guys, and they all broke out. You know, you've had Amon-Ra St. Brown that's broken out. You've had both safeties. You've had a lot of premier performances from the different guys. But you picked an interesting one, and I'm wondering if you have any others to add after thinking about it here, because I may have a couple other contributions, but I'm still sticking with my main one. But what was yours there from the discussion?
From the discussion we had before, I said Enos Rakestraw. I feel like he's kind of just flying under the radar because obviously Terrion Arnold being our first-round pick last year, he was in the spotlight when Carlton Davis got hurt, and unfortunately Rakestraw got hurt as well. We had to slide Branch from safety to nickel. We had to kind of move things around a little bit. And I feel like he just got lost in the translation because he got hurt early on. He did come back and play a total of 6 games, but I feel like his contributions last year were much like Jameson Williams, his first year, where the box score says he played in 6 games, but he played maybe 10 to 15 snaps in those games, was trying to, just get his feet wet. And prior to his injury, I know it's only preseason and training camp, but he was looking better in that limited sample size than Terrion Arnold at that time. And I know when I say that, some people will roll their eyes because it is just training camp, but at the time, that's all we have to go on. So as long as that ball kept rolling in that direction, he looked like he was going to be probably a day one starter, at least out of camp.
Well, and the opinions changed a lot on Arnold over the year. That was the interesting thing to watch with Arnold because obviously there was a lot made of the pass interference calls and all the flags that he drew, but that isn't that abnormal for that man-heavy scheme. I always tried to remind people during that time that Carlton Davis was like number 3 in the league while Arnold was 1, so it wasn't like you look at that and you say, hey, a lot of it's the scheme and it's a younger guy trying to adjust to when to use the hands, and there's a lot of nuance with that kind of thing. But it would have been interesting to see how much Rakestraw would have adjusted to the contact because he's used to that jam man coverage as well. But the part of the discussion that I found interesting on your show was that I don't know what they're going to do with these defensive backs, which is a good problem to have because they've got the 2 back-end safeties locked in, best safety pairing in the league. I think pretty clear cut. I'm sure there are other markets that would say their safeties are better, but I mean, as according to PFF and a lot of the production stats and what their importance to the team, you can't find 2 better back-end safeties to pair together. But then they did work to upgrade some of those depth spots that, even though they worked their hardest to avoid, they didn't want to get down to 5th and 6th on the depth chart and go to Kindle Vildor again, but they tried to upgrade some of those positions. But it'll be interesting to see if Rakestraw does factor in at that nickel, and if where Robertson factors in. Avonte Maddox, does he move to safety? And Big G has shown me they obviously added DJ Reed, which I think is an upgrade from Carlton Davis, in my opinion anyways. And so they're going to have to move those pieces around. You pretty much know that you got Arnold and Reed on the outside, but where everybody else slots in is going to be fairly interesting. You there, James?
Yes, sir. Sorry.
But yeah, so what do you think? Do you think Rakestraw kind of has? I know they have to break down and go into the practices. They're big on earning their roles there, but you have to think that Rakestraw's got kind of the inside track to that nickel there.
I think he does. Amik Robinson started last year at the nickel prior to the outside guys getting hurt because then he had to move to outside, and then Branch slid down from safety to nickel, and we had that entire rotation. Robinson held his own at nickel, and I mean, I don't think he is per se out of that spot. I think it's going to be, as you mentioned, I hate to say fair, but just who's better, which day, and hopefully that is the case. Just because, God forbid, but if someone gets hurt yet again, I mean, we have depth, thankfully, but we obviously don't want to go down that road. But with football being the physical sport that it is, injuries naturally do happen.
Well, I'm big on Robertson, but part of the reason that I think that they might want to work Rakestraw inside is partially because of Robertson's success last year. Because, like you said, football is a physical game. They're going to need depth on the outside. And I thought Robertson acquitted himself very nicely on the outside. His size kind of makes you lean to having him be on the inside, be a nickel, guarding the slot there. But he acquitted himself nicely against some of those big time receivers that were such a problem and such a complaint 2 years ago when the cornerback room was much weaker, when you had Cam Sutton and a bunch of those guys, Jacobs, and you had to guard those, the Justin Jeffersons of the world with those guys, and they weren't keeping up. Not that that is something that's easy to do for anybody, but I feel like with Robertson, he does contain those guys better than you would think for somebody his size. So that would leave it wide open for Rakestraw to kind of take that slot mantle and then rotate Robertson in on the outside. Big G's noting that, and this always factors into things. You get the last year Robertson's deal too, so he's going to be trying to play up and try to make sure that he earns his next deal, gets a bigger deal, whatever. So he's going to want to play himself onto the field.
Absolutely, I couldn't agree more. I'm trying to find the actual number because I know it is right here. Perfect. One thing that he was excelling at that I don't think enough people have given him credit for, just overall in conversations and in social media, maybe during the season they did, but his forced fumbles. He led the team with 3 forced fumbles last season. He was excellent at that old peanut punch coined by Tillman there. But he had 3 forced fumbles last year for our defense, and our next best guy had 1. So he was the only person all year long that forced more than 1 fumble.
Oh yeah, I mean, I do think the reinforcement of him as a tackler will be helpful, because that's really going to be the key for some of those nickel guys and stuff too. That's why they favored Branch there initially when they had other reinforcements on the backside, because he's a strong tackler to come off that edge. You can potentially blitz him. If somebody breaks into the defensive backfield, then you've got him as the first level of resistance there. Plus, you got Rock Yassin, who's a great name. So I just want people to say his name on the broadcast and see how the different people say it, because I just like good names. He's all name team, but he's a pretty solid player. And then I mentioned Maddox already. I feel like that's going to be a lot deeper group than they had last year, where we talked about this a little bit on your show, James, but I feel bad for Vildor because it always went back to him being the number 2 corner and people focusing on him. Whereas I don't necessarily see that weak link here anymore, because it seems like they've got a very solid room overall, that even if they go down to, say, Dorsey, who's recovering from an injury and is a special teams specialist, they'll still be able to work that out. And he's like number 6 now.
Yeah, and I personally wasn't too harsh on Vildor. I thought in his role for a number like 5-6 corner, I think he held up pretty well. If he caught that interception 2 years ago against San Francisco in the NFC Championship game instead of letting it bounce off his face mask, I don't think people have a bad word to say about him. But, I mean, he was right there. He was cornerback 5 or 6, and he was covering Brandon Ayuk, who is now a top 10 paid receiver in the league. So I don't want to per se say he got a bad break on that, but for a corner 5 or 6, he did what he could. But I still would agree with you. I do think we did upgrade pretty massively in the back end as a whole. I even think we have better safety depth this year, at least going this time last year. But I don't know if Rock Yassin is per se, in my personal opinion, going to make the roster because of the Maddox, because of the depth that we've talked about, because of the Terrion Arnolds and Reeds and Rakestraws and, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, that's a good point, James. I got to think he does, but I see what you're saying, because there's obviously only so many spots. You trim it down to 53 guys. You got to factor in the practice squad a little bit, who can kind of make it to the practice squad. But most of those defensive backs aren't going to clear to the practice squad because they didn't get a ton of young guys there. Maybe Jackson factors into the practice squad because he was, picked late. But I feel like they're going to have to trim that defensive line because they've got a strength in numbers there. They're going to want to keep a lot of guys, but that's the highest number right now. That's the number that you kind of got to deal with, and then see what you have left on the defense, because the guys that have a legitimate shot at making the roster at the defensive line, it's like 15 guys right now, and you can't hold that many guys on the roster and build comparable rooms on the offensive and defensive side there.
Yeah, I agree. I don't think it's per se an easy decision, but I see a lot of the extra and the depth and the 4s and 5s on the D-line being, in my opinion, easier cuts than some of the defensive backs. But in volume, in terms of total number, you are correct. That is where we have the bulk of our 90.
And they're going to be sensitive to that with all the injuries they had last year, too. So it'll be interesting what we'll be following along here throughout the offseason. But we appreciate you coming on, James, and tell people where they can follow you here in the meantime with the different outfits you have.
Yeah, thank you very much. It was my pleasure to be on. I would love to be on anytime you'll have me. My handle for Twitter/X is just my last name, Gullett, GULLETT_James. And my new by the numbers is @BlindNumbers. Because like I said, I tried to just use the stats and the metrics without the name and without the bias to that. And then you can catch all of my work, all of our podcasts, all that on Michigan Sports Media, on Twitter, YouTube, Spotify, all those good places.
Yeah, be sure to follow these guys. They have some great stuff, and they're kind of a young upstart in the media landscape here in Michigan. And I'll be following that blind numbers thing, James, because that's an interesting concept. I like that concept. But yeah, we appreciate you coming on, and we'll look forward to having you on again here.
Yep, thank you very much. Have a good day.
All right, thanks, James. Take care. All right, thanks to James Gullett. Appreciate him coming on. And yeah, our next guest is in studio. He's ready. He's got a Four Horsemen shirt on. It's Joey Williamson, Hollywood Joe, and so we'll have him on next, and maybe we'll get more Mr. Perfect references. Stick with us. You're listening to Sports Intel on Jethro FM. We're coming back here in studio. We don't have a lot of in-studio guests, but I'm happy to do this. We did this on Steve Project's show a few weeks ago and wanted to have him back, so we got Joey Williamson, otherwise known as Hollywood Joe. I think that's your moniker. Yep. Was that okay? So we're going to do a little bit of an interview with you here, because I was reading up on your blog and on your website here, and you actually wanted to go into wrestling yourself.
Yeah.
Was that going to be your stage name?
Yeah.
Okay. So what was your character going to be? Let's do some character diagnosis here.
I was always fascinated with the heels.
Okay.
Growing up, always, I loved Mr. Perfect. Kurt Hennig, he's been referenced a couple.
Third reference of Mr. Perfect on the show.
Thought his style and the way he sold moves, impeccable, amazing.
Okay.
Made everybody look good.
Yep. Which is a key to wrestling.
Yes.
And that's some of the stuff that I like to follow, because they're the people that are outside of wrestling that aren't as big of fans. They may poke fun at the fact that it's predetermined and different things, but it's like there's a lot of nuance to it that people don't understand if they don't follow it. And that's one of the big things, is how you sell a move.
Yeah.
You can't go overboard, or if you do go overboard, you got to do it in the right way.
Like Shawn did.
Shawn, yeah. Yep. Shawn Michaels is the one that I have in mind.
Yep.
Because the way he would fall out of the ring, I feel like the stunner was the big move to take correctly back in the day.
No, absolutely.
The RKO is kind of like that now.
Yeah.
Right.
They still have the stunner, obviously, because Kevin Owens does it.
Yep.
But the way he did it and sold it, and then went in that match with Hogan where he went toppling outside the ring, I thought that was hilarious.
I would say from a character standpoint, Ted DiBiase. I love the $1 Million Man.
Interesting. Okay, so that would fit with like the Hollywood Joe moniker.
Yeah.
You would be like a manager to like a heel stable.
Yeah.
And kind of build that out. That's interesting. Yeah, I didn't know that you had. I mean, it makes sense because you're a big wrestling guy.
Yeah.
But I didn't know you had tried. So did you actually? How far did you get in the pursuance of it?
Never ever. Well, I mean, I had thought about doing wrestling school, but then I went down the cold water where Dan Severn was and watched my high school best friend do it. I'm like, yeah, I don't think a doctor's going to clear me to do this.
Yeah.
And so that put the kibosh on that. And that's when I really started focusing on writing about it, like offering my opinions and analysis on things, and getting involved on the local scene when, Grand Rapids has had promotions from time to time.
Yeah, they've had some good ones. We were talking about Jimmy Jacobs earlier, who's a childhood friend of mine, and you know him, and he was big on the scene, kind of made it big here. And I'd like to talk to him. We were talking about that. I'd like to get him.
We got to get him in the studio.
That would be fun to get him. I still am connected with his brother. I haven't talked to Chris in years, but we used to go to wrestling events together, and then you fast forward several years, and he was actually on the card at a Van Andel event that I went to, which was crazy to me that we were in the crowd watching it when we were like 10 years old, and then here he is wrestling. So it's cool to see him make it big. But that's neat that you kind of repurpose that, because you have had significant health issues that you've overcome, which just to overcome them was an accomplishment, but you don't want to risk further injury or anything like that. With
did a lot of wrestling on my trampoline, though.
Well, and you talked about even some roof spots there.
Yeah,
so
there was one.
So that's good. That's classic, anyways. But I want to get into some of your analysis on wrestling and some of the things you find interesting. Big G's going to jump in on the conversation because he's a wrestling fan too. I want to start here. I alluded to this earlier, but I'm trying to catch up on the wrestling, knowing that we were going to talk about it on the show, and it is in just so many different places that I'm very confused. Where is the future going with this? Because this is, for people that are saying, hey, Ryan, I'm used to you covering the 4 major sports, all that. This is big business now, wrestling. I mean, there is, it's sports entertainment. It's a little different category than sports, but there's a lot of contracts here. There's a lot of money into it. You got big stars. You got Cena coming back for his final run, who's everywhere. He's a big movie star. Same with the Rock, Dwayne Johnson. But I'm interested to know how things are going here. Every time I tune in to WWE, I feel like it's in a different place.
Yeah.
Are they consolidating? Are they spreading out? Where is that going?
So right now, Monday Night Raw is on Netflix. That's the big one. NXT is on the CW network.
I saw that because one of my favorite shows is on the CW. I like Whose Line Is It Anyway?
Okay, yep.
So I see that advertised there. Big G's giving me the thumbs up.
And then SmackDown is on USA Network.
Okay.
Which is part of NBC Universal.
Right. Which these are kind of competing entities to a degree.
Yeah.
Are they consolidating, or are they trying to spread out their footprint? What do you think's going on there with the streaming?
I think so. For the longest time, Raw had been on USA.
Right.
I think
forever.
Yeah, forever.
Forever,
Yeah. And I just think, WWE's always kind of been ahead of the game when it comes to broadcasting. I mean, you think about it, the WWE Network was the first sports, standalone sports network.
Right.
And I think it's next February or March, maybe March 2026, WWE's media rights deal with NBC Universal comes to an end in terms of Peacock airing the pay-per-views.
And that's where they have the hub too, right? That Peacock is where they have the older footage and stuff.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yep.
So, but there's a but there. When WWE moved Raw away from USA and moved NXT away from USA, Peacock took all the Raw and NXT content down. So I would not be shocked within the next 5 years if you see all of WWE on Netflix.
Okay.
I just have that feeling. Because like you said, I mean, to watch sports nowadays, it is crazy.
It is.
We were having that conversation before we went on air.
Right.
That it seems like you have to subscribe to everything.
Yeah, just to follow the Tigers, I have to basically, so I have MLB to get the games if I miss them, if they go beyond 2 days, because they're on FanDuel for 2 days and then they expire.
Yep.
And then I was trying to track down the game yesterday. Scooble pitched such a fast game that I didn't even know it had aired already. If that's how crazy that game was. At 2:00, I checked thinking that the game hadn't aired yet, and it was already over because he went so fast, and it was on Roku.
Yeah.
And it wasn't actually, I think it was maybe concurrently streamed live by MLB. I couldn't tell, but it wasn't available on MLB afterwards, and it wasn't available on FanDuel. So, yeah, I do think it's the same with wrestling. They're going to potentially turn people away because it's like, hey, I want to watch these games, but I'm not going to pay $30 a month for MLB Network. I'm not going to pay, $20 a month for FanDuel and then still have my other subscriptions. Same with wrestling. Wrestling fans are dedicated. We know that.
Yes.
And but it's at least changed from the pay-per-view era where it used to be 30, 40, 50, 60, even $70, I think, at the high end of the pay-per-views. Yeah. It at least you don't have that. Those are contained within the different networks now, right?
AEW.
Right.
AEW is charging $60.
Right. And that one's interesting to me. I wanted to talk a little AEW with you because I know you're not an AEW fan, but it is interesting because one of your notes that we were talking about before the show was the fact that WWE has acquired AAA.
Yeah.
And I think that move was kind of provoked by some of AEW's partnerships with other wrestling companies. And so it brought by a good change. And it's kind of a thing where giving WWE a brief competitor, and you can, kind of assess, you'd know better than me, like what actual level of competition it was. It became a lot of like sniping from both sides. Like, oh, well, here's our ratings and all that. But I do like that I feel like it increased the level at WWE and now it's improved the programming because they didn't have a monopoly quite the same way they did before.
Exactly. And I also look at it in terms of like, corporate structure too. If you're still in the Vince McMahon era, you're not partnering with TNA. You're not buying AAA. It's just not happening.
No, you're not even mentioning those.
You're not mentioning anybody.
You literally, that's a good point, Big G. Yep. You literally weren't allowed to mention them. Some of the older school guys, like now you can tell they have trouble mentioning some of those outfits.
Yeah, and like even when Jeff Cobb just debuted a couple weeks ago, like they referenced his time in New Japan.
Right.
And to me, like if I'm a casual fan, watching, I'm gonna Google Jeff Cobb New Japan to see what he did there.
Yeah, it's weird because it's like that's not gonna take fans away from your promotion to say that this guy used to be somewhere else. They're gonna want to learn about the origin story, so to speak, of this other guy and see where it came from. Not like, oh, he appeared out of nowhere and now we can't use Jeff Cobb as his name because WWE has to license his name. They're not doing that stuff quite as much anymore.
Right. For an example, and I'm gonna bring up Seth Rollins. If this was still the Vince McMahon era, nobody would have ever heard of Tyler Black unless they watched Ring of Honor.
Right.
He would have always been Seth Rollins. The storyline would have been, Seth Rollins was, this, and he may have wrestled for some other independent promotions. And a lot of times Vince wouldn't even mention that, he would mention other independent promotions. But now, and I give Triple H a lot of credit for this, for at least, mentioning their backstory.
Oh, yeah. You can see a major difference in how everything is run under Triple H as opposed to Vince McMahon. Some people liked that era, and that era did progress them very far, but it like a lot of people when they've been doing it for a long time, it seemed like he got a little out of touch with the product and liked his staples to go to, whereas Triple H was trying to develop young talent, make partnerships. Those are all smart ideas in the modern day landscape here. So yeah, it's interesting stuff. I like talking about this part of it. We're going to talk more about it. We're going to take a quick break here, but then we're going to jump back in. And Rex is behind me. He also is a wrestling fan, so I'm going to give him my mic if he needs to jump in because we'll share because it's an interesting roundtable discussion here. But stick with us. You're listening to Sports Intel on Jethro FM. Coming back here with Big G and Joey Williamson in studio. We were talking a little bit in the break here, and we've been kind of doing the high level business stuff, which is interesting to me. And one of the things that obviously this is a business and they're trying to make they're trying to make money, and it is an interesting part of wrestling as a whole, because while people accuse other sports of putting their thumb on the scale or whatever, you can do that in wrestling. That's part of wrestling. You book certain wrestlers to win and to have runs, and you do that based on what you think is going to make ratings. And they've done that with John Cena. Last time we talked, Joey, we kind of differed in opinion on whether or not he would win at WrestleMania, and you were kind of wanting him to maybe hold off on that win. And it looks like maybe in the early going, maybe that was a little bit fortuitous, that maybe you were correct about that, because Rex was saying in the break that the ratings are actually down, which is interesting to me, that old school wrestling fans that followed Cena back in the day, or people that are interested in him because of his Hollywood career, haven't tuned in more. So I'm interested in getting your guys' take on that.
I think part of it is people really aren't buying into heel John Cena. Like, he was good guy John Cena for so long, and then just to come, do his final run as a heel, it doesn't make a lot of sense.
It doesn't make a lot of sense. And I want to ask you, Johnny, do you think if John Cena would have turned heel, say, a few years ago, and then went babyface and then went heel again, do you think that would have made more sense? Or
it would have depended on when he turned heel.
Yeah.
Like, if he would have been a heel against, say, like a Daniel Bryan, like that would have done big numbers.
Right.
Or a heel John Cena versus a babyface CM Punk, which we still might get down the road.
Right.
But I feel because he has spent most of his career as corporate babyface John Cena, it's just really hard to buy in the fact, well, okay, this guy's retiring, and all of a sudden he's just gonna.
All of a sudden he's a bad guy.
Yeah, it doesn't make much sense. And I personally think The Rock getting involved in WrestleMania, getting involved on the road to WrestleMania 41, but then not being at WrestleMania 41, I think that really hurt the storyline. Absolutely hurt it, big time.
Well, we previewed that on Steve Project's show, and we talked about how, because I'm big on the run-ins. I'm an old school wrestling fan. I love a good run-in. I love, all the people running in and messing with the match, especially a big match like that, like they had 2 years ago with The Undertaker and everybody running in. The only run-in we didn't even get that one that you're talking about with The Rock.
We got Travis Scott.
We got Travis Scott, who you guys had to tell me who that was.
Yeah. And he took a half hour to get to the ring.
I personally,
he had a longer intro than the Undertaker.
Absolutely, he did, and that killed it for me.
Yep.
Absolutely killed it. And if he would have done his slow entry, and then kind of distracted Cody Rhodes, and then we see The Rock come in from out of nowhere, not necessarily the main entrance, but maybe out of nowhere from under the ring or under wherever. I think that would have done so much better.
Yeah, how did we have more run-ins in the Randy Orton John Cena match than we did in the WrestleMania match?
I will say that Orton and Cena was better than Orton and Rhodes.
Yeah,
absolutely.
I will say this: when R-Truth showed up, I was not expecting that. That was total shock. That was I was half expecting, I was half expecting The Rock to kind of right the ship and show up a Backlash, because it's there was so much negative feedback about Travis Scott being the guy to cost Cody, and I'm I kind of get it, because The Rock is the one that inserted himself out of nowhere in this whole lead up to WrestleMania. And so, he went on Pat McAfee about, a day or two after WrestleMania aired, and he's like, well, there was no need for me to be there, and I'm just not buying that.
I'm not either. There were tens of thousands and millions of people watching, just waiting for Dwayne to show up.
Yep.
Well, and I guess that's the part you guys are going to have to help me with this, because obviously he's a huge name, as is Cena.
Yeah.
I think Travis Scott is. You're going to have to help me out a little bit with that. I don't know what the connection is. I know they were advertising his music and stuff, but like I don't know how much crossover there is with the WWE crowd and how much external, attention he drew.
I don't think the WWE crowd cares.
Okay, and so that's the feeling I got.
That
anyway.
is the vibe I've gotten, like, from everybody. Like, I've not seen one positive comment about Travis Scott being involved.
Because there's obviously a rich history. We were talking about Big G. We were talking about some of the early WrestleManias that was a staple with actors and musicians and all of that stuff being involved. That's a staple, but usually it's a big name, and I just didn't know if it was a name that I didn't know. Go ahead, Joe.
And I will say, Triple H is about to do a masterful job of correcting course on this Cena heel run by teaming him up with Logan Paul. Because nobody likes Logan Paul.
Everybody hates him.
Exactly.
But he's the right kind. This is exactly what we're talking about. He's the kind of heel you want. He does bring eyes to the WWE.
Absolutely.
I think he's the right kind of heel. He doesn't have go away heat. He has heat that is actually letting people tune into it.
And he is credible as an athlete.
Yes.
Whereas Travis Scott, all 102 pounds of him soaking wet, doesn't belong anywhere near any kind of a ring.
Agreed.
But Logan Paul, and this goes back to his match with Roman Reigns, the whole one lucky punch thing.
Yeah.
He's an amazing wrestler, and he's got the perfect heel vibe. Everybody can't stand him. Nobody likes Logan Paul, and like you said, Joey, Triple H will fix it.
Yep.
Yeah, it is interesting to see. I do think that's a good point with the Logan Paul thing and exactly what we're talking about here. But what else do you see happening? I'm curious who you think is going to be for your credibility purposes here, Joey. Yeah. You called Randy Orton as one of the first runs we'd have.
Yep.
And he did, in fact, he was the first opponent basically for Cena. So who else are we going to see? They're obviously working an angle now with Cody coming back in.
Right.
Team with Jay.
Yeah, and so that presumably means, a match with both of those guys. Where do we see that going? But do we see feuds with those guys?
This is my bold, but and I had thought about this late Saturday night. So this tag match is taking place at Money in the Bank. And I have a feeling it'll probably be co-main event or main event. Too big of a match.
More than likely,
yes. So you got to think about this. In this match, you not only have the undisputed WWE champion, John Cena, you have the world heavyweight champion in Jey Uso. You can't sit here and tell me that whoever wins the men's Money in the Bank earlier in the night is not going to show themselves in that match. Something big is going to happen in that match. Either Jay's going to drop the title or somebody's going to attempt to cash in on Cena to set up Cena's next feud.
So do you see that? Obviously, they like to open the show hot. Do you see them opening the show with the men's Money in the Bank?
Absolutely.
So that they can then let that simmer and then they do that. Now, okay, I'm going to throw out something. I told you I might mention him in this, Joey. That I know this isn't going to be a popular opinion, and I know he's not going to be in the running for Money in the Bank, but I'm going to tell you who I want to win Money in the Bank, and then I'm going to get your actual legitimate opinion. That's going to be somebody that's in the match.
Yeah.
I want R-Truth to win Money in the Bank because I would like to see him running around with that briefcase and the hilarity that would ensue.
Yes.
I know this isn't going to happen. I know this is a pipe dream, but that would be hilarious to me. Like the false cash-ins, having the wrong case. There's a lot of material there for one of the best comedic wrestlers of all time. But I want to get your actual opinion on who you think maybe are some of the favorites for Money in the Bank.
So right now in the men's, Solo and LA Knight have qualified so far. Tonight there's 2 more qualifying matches. So the field isn't quite set, but LA Knight has been close 2 years in a row.
Right.
I feel like if it doesn't happen this year, it's not going to happen ever. People are still behind LA Knight. He still gets a loud pop every time he comes out. I think in terms of mic skills, LA Knight could easily hang with John Cena. He could talk people into the arena.
Yep.
I think LA Knight, John Cena would be a great feud right before SummerSlam. I don't think it would be at SummerSlam, but it would be good for Saturday night's main event, or maybe even after SummerSlam.
Well, do you think that's part of the reason that some of these feuds are suffering a little bit with Cena? Because it doesn't seem, I'm not watching all the programming, but it doesn't seem like they're having enough time to actually build the program.
Yeah, there's too many big shows happening. Like this thing with R-Truth was only really one show. Like, he put him through a table, all of a sudden R-Truth challenges him, but there's no interaction between the two.
You didn't give any opportunity for one promo. You know, because R-Truth would have been great in that promo.
He had one promo by himself.
Right. But those two in the ring at the same time would have been hilarious.
Yeah, and so
Absolutely.
I think Cena's next feud's gonna have to be someone with, like, have multiple matches with someone. Not just one-offs, because honestly, I know they said last time ever, but I still think that there's more he could do with Randy.
Oh, he's got so much history with these guys that you got a lot to work with. That's why I think some more promos and kind of working the storyline a little bit more makes sense there. But Joey, we got to get out of here soon. I want to make sure you can plug where to find your information in your blog here.
Yep, Hollywood'sWorldOfSports.com has all the links to my social media on Facebook. Usually just use Facebook and Twitter now. That's where you can find me, talk wrestling and sports.
Excellent. Yeah, he follows a lot of sports there, so be sure to check that out. And Big G, appreciate you joining in on the discussion here.
Happy to do it.
And appreciate you keeping us on track. And we want to thank the rest of the guests here, Schuyler, Whitney, Ginessa, Aguirre, Mike Payton, James Gullett, and then, of course, Joey in studio here. And I want to thank our sponsors, Mary Freebed, Collectible Insurance Services, West Michigan Eye Care Associates, Eric Hall Aesthetic and General Dentistry, Calder Financial, Encore Business Group, Rydan Investments, and Grand Management Group. We appreciate all of their support, and we appreciate your support here, listening to us. We'll be on next week from 7 to 9 here on Monday, and then be sure to tune in to the Sports Project from 7 to 9 Wednesday night and 10 to 12 in the morning on Saturday. Until then, we'll talk to you next week. Stay informed and stay vigilant. Have a great week.